Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. It is July 30th, 2017. We're here together. I hope that you have been here for the whole show. If not, the videos are available. You can check them out. I wanted to talk to you about the signs of an emerging church as it begins to emerge in your church. Are you aware? Do you know the warning signs? Celebrity pastor Carl Lentz, who pastors Hillsong Church in New York City, pastors a megastar by the name of Justin Bieber. They're friends, and he personally shepherds Justin. Well, they were photographed recently partying in a tavern in New Zealand. They were slamming back shots. Pictures show Lentz smiling as Bieber begins to remove his clothes at something called the Blue Door Bar in Queenstown. What is that? That's the contemporary church. That's the popular contemporary emerging, put any other name you want with it, form of Christianity. It's a belief system that emphasizes grace over the obedience to the Word of God. And so how do people move from one to the other? Well, the answer is they do it slowly. They do it carefully. They do it incrementally. So how would you know if this was happening in your church, if your church was starting to emerge? Well, one expert, a fellow by the name of Dan Sutherland, offers steps that he sees in a lot of patterning in a lot of these different places, and he calls them transitional. One of the things here, he says, is that they'll change the approach. The church will no longer be program driven. That's the more traditional way church operates. But now it will be purpose driven. It will move from reaching people who are not saved, reaching out to the unsaved community, preaching the gospel and encouraging people and having people be saved. It will now turn their attention to reaching the unchurched. And you hear that a lot today, unchurched. It will move in terms of its leadership structure. It will move away from the traditional elder, deacon, pastor, board, whatever form, the biblical model, to having staff make all the decisions. They will change from a senior pastor model to that of multiple pastors. Now, having multiple pastors is not wrong in and of itself, but the goal here is to move away from the one guy to a board of directors. And then there'll come the change of ministry. From the staff doing ministry to lay ministers doing the ministry. Now, that sounds like a great idea. Get people engaged, get them involved in ministry. It's not bad. But they will use this whole idea of lay pastors to increase the indoctrination, the group think. They'll get more other people into this leadership group. And they will change your strategy. They will suddenly come up with a life cycle process or something like it, driven by small groups. Don't be surprised if they don't start changing the schedule. The services meeting at different times or having different ways of doing it. When they talk about it, it will be this is a meeting, a service for the unchurched, this is a service for somebody else. If you've got to reach out to the already saved, you really need to do that in a separate service because we do more in-depth teaching and all. But this expert says in his observation over the years, what they're doing is separating the congregation. They don't want the already saved to have an undue influence over the new people coming in. And then they'll move to the small groups, from traditional educational groups to relational groups. This is to increase the peer pressure to accept wrong teaching or a wrong format, or to sow the seeds of their new philosophy. The author says it concerns how we should relate to the world around us, how we make the gospel culturally relevant, as opposed to just simply preaching the gospel. And once all the mechanics are in place, they will begin putting together what they call a vision team, a small handful of leaders carefully chosen. And they will want to choose dreamers rather than detail people. Dreamers who are trustworthy to keep their mouths shut about the plan and where this is all heading until the time is right for it to be shared. And all of this will work quietly and secretly behind the scenes. They know what they're doing is wrong. At least they know it's different, and they don't want everybody to be aware of it quite yet. And so one group is taught, one book, one formula says you prepare for the vision. You collect information, do surveys of your membership, your neighborhood, the unchurched, your community. Secondly, you have a holy discontent with the status quo. And then you fast, and you pray, and you wait. Sound familiar to anybody? How do you deal with the people that are of the old guard, that are in there and they don't like what they see? Well, in the books, in the literature, it says there will be opposition from those whom the enemy controls. Expect anger. Expect a fight. And get members to pray for your church. The pastors are taught that objectors, who one author calls leaders from hell, are to be labeled Sanballats, enemies against what God is trying to do. He says you cannot call this guy a leader from hell to his face, but you can call him a Sanballat. So either convince them to follow through pressure or through insult, or chase them off. Another principle is be willing to let people leave the church. This book teaches that the traditional members who are pillars of the church are just going to hold you back. You're not going to allow the changes. They're going to fight your methods. This author, along with Rick Warren, are proud of the numbers they've chased off. He says when you set the vision and stay the course, you determine who leaves. There are other changes. Drop the titles like pastor or doctor. They're too formal. They intimidate the unchurched. Dress casually. No more ties, slacks, dresses, shirts, or coats. You can't appear to be elitist. Use common speech. Stop using religious words like sin or salvation or judgment or hell. Here's what Rick Warren teaches on the subject. And these are taken from his website, pastors.com, where you can access handouts from his pastoral training seminars, and some also excerpt from his book, The Purpose-Driven Church. He says, enlist support from the legitimizers in your church. Get the people on board who are the easiest to convince, those younger than the pastor, those who have started attending after the pastor took over. Call everything, every change, an experiment. require all members to sign 4 covenants. There is the membership covenant, the ministry covenant, the maturity covenant, the missions covenant. Anybody see anything biblical here yet? He says you need also to focus on your purpose. He couches this in terms of Christian education, and he calls this the core. Class 101, introduce to your church family the membership oath. Then require it. Class 201, introduce people to spiritual maturity. There's a ministry oath that is then required. Class 301, discovering my shape for ministry. And oh, by the way, there's a ministry oath required. And in amongst this are personality aptitude tests that are given to people. And lastly, there is discovering my life mission class with a mission oath that's required. Everybody's either to find a volunteer job at the church, or they're going to be viewed as selfish. Now, Rick Warren gives the examples of bring them in, build them up, train them for, and then send them out. Under marketing, he says come up with a symbol, a logo that everyone can identify with, that will create an emotional reaction when people see it, like an American flag. When you're preaching, tell stories. Give people a vision so they can see themselves and identify with you. Change your worship music. Use very contemporary music and make it loud. Why? Never understood that. He says if an unchurched person comes in and everyone is talking quietly, they'll feel uncomfortable. But if everyone is shouting over the music, they'll feel anonymous. Also, since Rick Warren is going after young adults, he says that they like to feel the music physically. Make sure it's loud enough to penetrate. Change your worship to less singing by the congregation and more performances. They can just sit back and watch. He says seekers are comfortable with songs they don't know and prefer to be passive watchers. And by all means, do a building project. Build it and they will come. Rick Warren practically guarantees that if you follow his marketing program, your attendance will increase by at least 20%. Drop the term sanctuary, call it a worship center instead. Use movable chairs instead of pews so it can become a multi-purpose room. The author says, as I researched this, almost every discernment ministry recommended the book Redefining Christianity by Pastor Bob DeWay. This author said, I bought the book. I found it wonderful, scripture-filled refutation of all of this drivel, and you can order it at the website. The website is cicministry.org. cicministry.org. If you need more proof, according to Newsmax.com, Rick Warren was among the speakers in November 2014 at the Humanum, that the Vatican's International Religious Colloquium, is that how you pronounce it? On the complementarity of man and woman. See, they make these things, you can't pronounce them. He was there. This thing brought together faith leaders from both Christian and non-Christian religions around the world to examine and to propose anew the beauty of the relationship between man and woman in marriage. In an interview with a Christian website and news outlet, Raymond Arroyo spoke after the conference at this TV thing, saying that Rick Warren called for adherents of various Christian denominations to reunite with Roman Catholics and with Pope Francis to work together on 3 shared goals, focusing on the sanctity of life, the sanctity of sex, and the sanctity of marriage. Noble goals. He went on to defend Catholicism and to clarify some of the most common misconceptions about Catholic teaching pertaining to Marian dogmas and prayer to the saints, saying things like, there are still real differences which separate Catholics from other Christian denominations, but if you love Jesus, we're on the same team. A unity of mission, not a unity of structure. In a 2-minute video released by the Catholic News Service, Rick Warren is seen and heard saying, we have more in common than what divides us. And he offered his rationale. He says they, meaning Catholics, would all say, we believe in the Trinity. We believe in the Bible. We believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We believe in salvation through Jesus Christ. And these are the big issues. Problem. Official Roman Catholic theology rejects, overtly or by obfuscation, 2 out of these 4 basic doctrines. They don't believe in the Bible the way we do. Their catechism explains the Bible. They don't even study the Bible in seminary very much, according to Catholic priests who've spoken to me. No, we don't really study that much don't know that much about the Bible. It's all in the catechism. It's all in their law. And salvation through Jesus Christ? The Roman Catholic Church, all Catholics, Greek, Orthodox, and Russian, and anything that's Catholic, they all believe that salvation comes through water baptism and the baptism by a Catholic priest. Ask them. Be sure to couch the statement in such a way that they have to answer honestly. Don't let them obfuscate. Press them for the details. Do I have any hope of going to heaven if I'm not a baptized Catholic? And the answer, according to the Catholic Catechism, no! Well, do I have any hope of going to heaven if I am a baptized Catholic? Yes. There's always hope. Can I be sure? No. The Pope isn't even sure. Does that sound like Christianity to you? Biblical Christianity? BereanResearch.com